Welcome to the Modern CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping accounting firms achieve success. If you're an accounting firm owner who wants to learn how to provide virtual CFO services, then this podcast is for you.
Welcome to episode 4. Today, we are going to talk HR. So we brought in our HR guru, Zach Montroy, and of course, our COO, Adam Hale, to talk through the HR process and also our hiring process, especially. So Zach, I know it's difficult hiring distributed for a lot of reasons, but if you want to go through that process and how Summit does our hiring process from start to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's really interesting when you think about good hiring processes. And I think what's really interesting is many companies, I think, don't spend enough time in the hiring process. And we all know hiring the wrong person can, be catastrophic to a culture. It can be catastrophic to an organization. And so investing the right amount of time, making sure your process is clear, making sure that process results in the right hire is obviously really important. Jim Collins talks a lot about right people, right seats, doing the right things in his work. And so we really worked on making sure that we've got a really good process that's going to lead to getting the right people on our team. And that's, I think, very different remotely. For years, I led HR processes for different organizations, and we didn't have remote employees. We had, we were brick and mortar. We had people and teams in some instances in different locations, but they were always reporting to a brick and mortar location. And so it was honestly a little bit easier in that scenario to really get at hiring the right people for culture fit, making sure that their skills and abilities align with what we were looking for. And so we've really kind of drilled down, I think, a good process for doing that for Summit and for our team. And it really starts with obviously making sure, from a marketing standpoint, from a content standpoint, people know who we are. We're really clear about our culture. We're really clear about the right people that are on our team, what those skills and abilities look like, what that talent looks like, what we expect as far as client interaction. Hopefully when people look at Summit, when people look at the job that they're applying for, they know who we are as a company, so that we get over 3,000 views per job post that we have a month. That usually translates into a couple hundred people actually applying for positions. And, from there, we really start assessing that cultural fit right away. We obviously are looking to hire highly talented and skilled accountants. But one thing that we do that's very different, I think, than I've seen most companies do is we ask for a video right away. We ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves, tell us a little bit about their career and their professional journey right away. And so from that, I'm hoping that they obviously know how to use a webcam and, have some sort of technological acumen.
I've seen some of those videos. Yeah. So the answer is not always yes.
Right. Yeah. We've gotten some funny ones, that's for sure. So make sure you're not looking like Tony the Tiger in a silhouette background, all that kind of stuff. But, even there, I think Adam's onto something. I think they have a couple of minutes to answer that question, but I want to know kind of what's the story of your professional trajectory. We're not looking to hire, just anyone that has a CPA or not anyone who has an accounting degree. Client interaction is really, really important to us. Making sure that you can communicate well is really important. So we see that. We see how concise you can be. We see, how well you can communicate your own story over that. And then obviously we're looking at, some more technical questions like, how long have you been in the industry? What does your job experience look like? We ask the salary question right away. What are your expectations with salary? We pay on a national average because you can live anywhere. So, you've got people in San Diego, we have people in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we have people in Nashville. And so we don't pay on geographic location because, as a remote firm, distributed firm, that's not something we have to do because you can work from anywhere. So just making sure that, fair and equitable pay is based on a national average. So we ask that question right away. And, people that are hoping for something more than that national average, that's kind of a disqualifier to us. We want to make sure we're clear. Brene Brown says clear is kind, unclear is unkind. We want to make sure we're clear on that right away. From there, then we actually send a number of other questions, where we're letting you answer those on video. We want to know about not only that journey that you've been on professionally, but what do your technical skills look like? How do you handle difficult client interactions? What things are you most proud of that you've been a part of working on? What are you expecting, from this job? We want to make sure that we can glean, again, that cultural fit. We're not necessarily looking for someone who has 20 plus years of experience in accounting. We obviously want to make sure those skills are there, but we more importantly want to make sure that you're a good fit for the work that we do, which I think is really different from most CPA firms. From there, I believe strongly in team interviews. And so we have the hiring manager interview. We have people that are on the team that person will be working with interview. Obviously, Jamie, you're in a lot of the interviews. And we kind of save we save our senior leadership for last.
Bat and cleanup.
I want to make, what'd you say?
Bat and cleanup. Yep.
Exactly. Like we want to make sure that this person's going to be a good fit, that, they understand we're not looking for data entry. We're not looking for someone who likes to necessarily sit in Excel all day long or in QuickBooks all day long, but can understand, how does this relate to the client's business? What's the bigger story here? What's the story behind the numbers? What, strategically are you learning from the data that's going to help this business owner make better decisions? That's why you're there. You're a consultant, and they're trusting that voice and that experience. And so making sure that there's a comfort level there and making sure those motivations align with the position. So that's what we're looking for, especially in those team interviews. And we're honest. We let our team say the good, the bad, and the ugly about what it is that we do. We're always trying to grow and get better, but we want to make sure, anyone who comes on our team has a clear picture of expectations of what the job looks like, what's difficult about it, what, our team loves about the work that they do. And we run a few assessments as well. We run an assessment on emotional intelligence. There's a lot of research, a lot of work that's being done on the impact of emotional intelligence, the profitability of companies. We want to make sure that we're hiring emotionally intelligent people to be on our team. We want to make sure their motivations and strengths align with the job. So we're not only assessing those, we're debriefing those assessments in the interviewing process as well, to really hopefully make that decision of getting the right people on the Summit bus and getting them in the right seat right away.
Yeah, what he said. So, you can tell just by Zach talking, how passionate he is about hiring and HR and culture. And I think that's what was kind of missing. It was kind of a check the box thing for Summit a long time ago. Of course, we tried to focus in on technical skills. No matter what tests we put in place, it just didn't seem like that was. So permission to play is that accounting. Like, we assume that that's kind of like ground level, where we never really focused. We would tell our story. We'd be super excited about our story and make it sound like everything's just gravy all day long, because we were so passionate about what we did. What we didn't do, though, is really kind of make sure the cultural fit was solid. And bringing somebody like Zach in that could set up those different steps, including like meet the team and all those kind of things, was huge. He also has a good eye for, he can take that first video and he can kind of get a good feel whether or not he wants to talk to somebody. And then whenever he talks to somebody, then he decides, okay, this I think is going to take us to the next level. Let's look at the assessments. Let's get the team involved. And I think that the EQI, as he mentioned, has been huge, because that's not only about self-awareness, which is really important, but it's also about understanding other people and their emotions and how to be able to work with them. And in our environment, that's all we're doing all day long. We're supporting customers. We're helping them through tough times. We're helping them make decisions that aren't easy. And so it requires a high level of emotional intelligence to be able to kind of get on that roller coaster ride with them, really, and be able to communicate that back. And I think that it's super important that we do that at the client level, but then also on the team level as well. So EQI was one of those missing pieces. But overall, like I said, as you heard Zach talk, the real missing piece was just having somebody like Zach monitor and oversee the process. That way, by the time it gets to me, I trust what Zach's opinion is. I trust the team. So for me, it's not really like final decision, Caesar says, thumbs up, thumbs down kind of a thing. For me, it's just about expectation setting. And that's what's super important to me as a team member and as a leader. Is I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page with, what we expect out of them and then what they can expect out of us. So that's really all my role is at that point.
Yeah. And there's a huge weight and responsibility to that as well. By the time a candidate gets to the CEO or the CEO, COO, CFO, whatever that leadership structure looks like. And Adam has the final say in hiring. Jody has the final say in hiring. By the time a candidate gets to them, like, I want to make sure that I haven't missed anything, but there's a great deal of trust riding on the process, riding on, the vetting process, especially. And I think, Adam pointed something out there that I think is really, really important in the hiring process. Two things, actually. One, when we talk about core values, it's been really, really helpful and important that we've done the work of operationalizing those core values within the organization. Those are the ultimate filter on whether someone is going to be a good fit for the team or not. We value curiosity, we value humor and collaboration and adaptability, empowerment, candor. We've operationalized those values within the culture. We know what healthy humor, healthy curiosity looks like. And we know what those slippery behaviors are when those aren't being used correctly or they're not being valued within the culture. We want to make sure that there's deep alignment with the candidate and living those core values out. Like, that should already be a part of who they are. Yeah, we're going to teach what they look like within our culture, but we want to make sure that that foundation is there. And secondly, we're not afraid to hire people who are better accountants than us. I'm not an accountant, so that will always be the case for hiring, right?
Especially Jamie. That's like
right. Exactly. Right. No, Jamie's awesome. But it's right. Like, we have to be okay with hiring better consultants, better people at strategy, better people that, people that know the technical tools that we use better than us. Because we only grow like that raises the level of the team over and over and over again. There's always that, I think you see this in unhealthy teams. You want to hire someone who's not as good as you, someone who's a little worse because like you want to look better. That's not okay. We're not okay with that. We're a team. We value collaboration. And frankly, we're going to celebrate the win of hiring someone who knows a certain area of accounting better than us.
Yeah, I would say that there is a little bit of a difference whenever we hire a CFO. So when we hire the CFO, instead of it just being expectation setting at the very end, we do bring Jody and I both into the equation, and we want to just have a lot of real good conversations. So we have met some of the CFOs in a city. We'll just go and spend a day. Jamie, I know you've accompanied us. We'll walk through everything we do, how we do it, just kind of get a vibe for if they're, if they understand what we're talking about, get a feel for how they deliver. And then we just want to hang out. So we'll go out to dinner and just have normal conversations, find out more about them so we can kind of see if those culture and those core values are kind of in sync as well. Yeah. So it's definitely a little bit different for the higher, more senior level people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think one of the big things that Zach's talked about, Adam's talked about as well, is I feel like one thing Summit does really well is the qualification process. So I've been in interviews before, and the qualification process usually just has to do with salary and are they a CPA and all those things. But I think adding in the EQI to that, adding in trying to figure out some of the core values. Every time I've interviewed a candidate, everybody's been in those interviews where you're like, oh, wow, 5 minutes in, this guy's a dud, this isn't going to work out, or this person's a dud, it's not going to work out. We very rarely have those interviews, at least when it gets to me, because of the qualification process we have. So I think that a lot of the reasons we do that, I'm guessing, is because we're distributed. We want to make sure we have a lot of candidates coming in. So kind of the limitations I see for us being distributed, or the difficulties are, one is we get a lot of candidates we can hire from anywhere, which is obviously a benefit, but it also makes it a little more difficult. Is two, the interview process being in video. Sometimes people just aren't very comfortable in front of the video and how that interview works. And then,
which is great, by the way, because that's how we deliver our service.
Right.
So if they're not comfortable in front of the camera, thank you for figuring that out right away.
Right.
So
for us,
that is a core part of what we do. So that's good.
I think the third difficulty is a lot of people think of work from home models as being a part-time thing. A lot of people come to us and say, great thing about working at Summit is I can have my child right next to me while I'm working for the day, and I can, stop and give them breakfast breaks and lunch breaks. And that's not really how we work. So those are 3 of the obstacles that I've seen. Is there any I'm missing, Zach? And how have we adapted to those obstacles?
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are all huge, huge pieces. And again, that's where we just really clarify within, there's some boundary setting there too, right? Like we want to make sure that if you're working from home, you've got a dedicated space to be able to do that. You've got a home office. I've got a 2.5-year-old. Like I know it would be super distracting to have my 2.5-year-old in the background right now, right? Like no work would be getting done. And so making sure there's that deep understanding, I think, of, what's okay, what's not okay when it comes to working from home, and making sure that you've got those boundaries in place. And, like we've got flex time, and that's a great thing about working from home. The other thing too that I would add in there is I think there's a professionalism that we want to make sure is there. We're talking to owners and CEOs of companies, and, we want to make sure like we're professional in our interactions with them. And I also think, in working from home, you've got to make sure that you can, we look at, I'm more of an extroverted person. And so one of my big fears in working from home was like, am I going to really feel like I've met this need of interacting with people all day long? And sometimes the opposite is true for people. They think if I'm working from home, I'm not going to have to interact with anyone. And that's not true.
Right.
We are on Zoom, we're on GoToMeeting, we're on Sakoko, we're on these tools on meetings all day long. And so making sure that you've got that ability to relate to other people and you're available, and you've got, really that not only the ability to do that, but that the want to, and really understanding how to relate, from the technical side, how to relate that to our clients. And so I find that to be kind of a challenge to make sure that people understand that working from home is, you don't get to hide behind a computer and not talk to people all day long. And on the flip side, you do, like, you're going to get to exercise those extroverted tendencies as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important to also bring that back into remote employees as well, because, there's not a whole lot of firms out there that are distributed like us, but a lot of people have a remote workforce where people work a couple days a week from home, or they'll work a week or however that works, maybe a certain time of day. It's still important to have that dedicated space. It's still important to know that you can't, be babysitting. That doesn't mean that if your kiddo's sick or whatever, you're home working. That's not what the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I'm saying like just as a normal reoccurrence. I don't have a sitter on Wednesdays, so I'm going to stay home and work. Well, that might not be the best working arrangement either. So again, make sure all these things apply to remote staff as well, not just distributed teams.
I think, there's a pacing there too, right? Like, I remember being in an, brick and mortar office setting, and, there's a lot of time that can be spent on, walking to the kitchen and grabbing a donut or your coffee. And like, you get, you have the extra time, during the day. You don't have as much of that. And so there's a little bit more, I would say, like a heavier pace to the work that we do. And obviously you set that. And so big thing there is we want to make sure we're hiring self-disciplined people who, are going to make sure that they're working when they say that they're working. And so making sure that they've got integrity, they're doing what they say that they're doing, because there's a high level of trust and responsibility that we're, granting to anyone on our team. And I would say it's even more important in the remote setting that we've assessed that on the front end, because at the end of the day, if you're in, Dallas, Texas, and I'm in Nashville, like I'm not watching over your shoulder. Obviously there's that accountability to time tracking, all that kind of stuff. But, we want to make sure that we've got people with integrity and responsibility on our team as well.
That's what I'm saying. I think that we have to do those things because we're distributed, but everybody should be doing those things. So, and should have that kind of stuff and that level of trust. So I think all of those things that you mentioned in our entire process, I don't know that we would have been forced to be as deliberate about it if we were not remote, or distributed rather, but I'm glad that we do. And if we were ever brick and mortar, I would want to still follow the same, the same process, because I think it's very effective.
Yeah, for sure. And you talked a lot about core values. And to me, I've interviewed a lot in my career. And I think once we defined our core values, that made interviewing a lot easier for me because I knew what I was looking for and I knew what those skills were. And so, Zach, can you go in a little bit to what an interview should look like, what kind of questions you should ask, and what you're looking for in that interview?
Yeah. So, people make fun of my questions always start with like, tell me about a time. Help me understand. There is never a yes or no question there shouldn't ever be a yes or no question, I think, in an interview. But the easy question is going to be like, one of our core values is curiosity. Tell me how you're curious. Okay, well, like you just lobbed a softball, right, at someone. Like, I want to know, tell me about a time that you had a really difficult challenge that you had to solve and you didn't know the answer. What'd you do? So you're picking up core values in someone's narrative. And so I've created a giant guide of interviewing questions because we're looking at behavioral, we want to know those behavioral traits are there. And so you want to ask those narrative-based questions that are really going to get at helping you understand how they apply the core values within their work, within, their professional story. And so making sure whatever your core values are, and, I listed ours there, I want to make sure that we're asking questions that are going to really drive at, like, how is that a part of your everyday life? How is that a part of your work?
So,
go ahead.
Well,
Adam.
I was just going to say, so said another way, you're not really listening for, because you're not going to know the technical answer to some of this stuff anyway. What you're really listening for whenever somebody's talking to you is how they're articulating it. Is their answers clear and concise, but also listening to see more about the context and the quality of the answer as opposed to the specific result, right? Was that fair?
Right. Absolutely. And I mean, one of our core values is adaptability, that flexibility. We assess that in the emotional intelligence inventory, but I'm also looking for grit. I'm looking for resilience. This industry, and I would say Summit's on the forefront of embracing technology that is changing in this industry. The way that accounting looked 10 years ago is very, very different from how it looks today and how it's going to look 10 years from now. In my previous role, like I've worked with accountants and CFOs my whole career. I want to make sure that they've got that grit, that adaptability, that resilience that's going to be really important to them working out on our team, still being on the bus 3, 5, 10 years from now, that they know they've got that good work ethic to doing what it takes to deliver for our clients. Because at the end of the day, that's what's most important in what we do.
Yeah, another thing that I think that's helped me out a lot in interviewing is, not assessing their interviewing skills, but assessing their actual skills. So a lot of times you throw a question out there and they'll just set it up. So like when I heard about behavioral interviews, someone told me you should star it, right? You should give me the situation, the action, and then the result. And so, a lot of times people will just lay out the situation and I'll ask a lot of follow-up questions so I can get that action and get that result. Cause that's what I'm concerned with. Like they might do a really bad answer, but then maybe I ask those follow-up questions and they give me a really good action and result that happened from it. And like, oh, wow, I could totally see that applying to Summit. So I think that's something that's really helped at my interviewing is making sure that I'm actually assessing their abilities instead of just how well they interview. And again, you want to make sure they can handle themselves on the camera because of what we do, but you want to make sure that at the same time that they have the right skills. So that's been helpful.
Yeah, and I think what you said there's actually something deeper. I think that's really important in what you just said. You've got to be a really good listener when you're interviewing somebody. And I've sat in so many interviews where people are not listening well. They're just thinking about what they need to say next. Mm-hmm. What the next question that they're going to ask is. You should be listening to ask follow-up questions to dive really deep into, like you just said, whatever story they just told, like, help me understand that better. I mean, figure out what those questions are that you can ask, but really listen, like pick up on those cues, because that's where the answers are. That's where you're going to figure out if they're a good person to have on your team or not.
Yeah. And I've seen that in some of the notes and everything by the time somebody gets to me or somebody doesn't get to me that I thought would. I've seen Jamie and some of the other team kind of respond back like great answers, really solid responses, well put together, not a whole lot of content there. And so his follow-up questions, as he's trying to kind of tease that out a little bit, I think uncover, some holes that might otherwise be covered up by just somebody that's super polished in an interview. So
yeah, and I think too, and Jamie and I were just talking about this the other day, like sometimes you can tell people who have this like agenda of what they want to communicate in an interview, and you're like, that was a really articulate answer to a question I didn't just ask. So
it's like, hey man, I've been prepping for this one for like 2 days.
Right.
You're going to hear this answer.
Yeah. Right. Or they've been doing a lot of interviews and they have 3 stories that they're going to tell no matter what the questions are. These are the 3 questions I'm going to tell. So, for sure. So Adam, we've talked a lot about the process. Just one final question for you. Anything we missed? I know you're the COO. You're the one making the final decisions. Anything we missed talking about in the process that you want to make sure gets out there in this podcast?
No, like I said, I think that by the time it gets to me, I'm just qualifying, expectations, which is great. It's really saved a ton of time because as Zach mentioned, we would get a couple thousand resumes a year. And to be able to read those and vet those, like being able to shrink that process down for somebody like myself that still wants to be involved in the final say has been a lifesaver, like countless hours. So the process I feel like is super solid. And the results are in our team. We've had some really, really strong hires. So I'm happy.
Yeah, definitely. I think narrowing down the process, like as it gets to each person in the process, it should be even closer to the final decision. So I think that's really helped. And hopefully this discussion has helped a lot of our listeners. I think we do a lot of unique things. Like I said, the qualification process, the core values. So hopefully this podcast helps our listeners because I do think it's a great process. And I want to thank both Zach and Adam for joining us and appreciate it. I'm sure you guys will be back for future podcasts.
Cool. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie.
Enjoy this episode? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving modern CPA firm success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.